There are movies out there so disturbing they feel dangerous to watch, not because they rely on jump scares or gore, but because they create psychological contamination. The kind of films that linger in your head for days after. And while everybody talks about films like Salo or Martyrs or even a Serbian film, there's a whole underground network of disturbing films that most people don't know about. These are the films that exist on the margins of horror culture, movies that focus on voyeurism, psychological collapse, death exploitation, movies about grief and human depravity. Some are experimental, some are nihilistic, and some of them don't feel like films at all. They feel like evidence. So my name's Ricky. I love disturbing movies, and here are 10 disturbing movies nobody seems to talk about. So starting off with one of the most obscure films on this list, we have Charlotte's Net. So Charlotte's Net is a really obscure horror film about two friends who are descending into the darkest depths of the internet, where their curiosity slowly turns into total destruction. Now, on the surface, this just feels like another dark web horror movie. But what makes this movie so disturbing outside the atmosphere alone is what it decides to show you. Woven into the narrative of this film is real life footage from the internet. And we're not just talking like internet fail memes or anything like that. We're talking about actual nasty stuff. The movie weaponizes internet anxiety, not in some kind of Hollywood way, in a way that feels genuinely disturbing and genuinely upsetting. The film itself isn't fantastic, but the reason it's on this list is because of what it decides to show us. I wasn't prepared to see real life atrocities in this movie, so it was really jarring and really shocking. The film really taps into a modern fear that the internet isn't just a tool, but some kind of abyss. It's this mix of analog horror and cyber paranoia, and because the film has a ultra low budget, it gives this movie a real feeling of authenticity. This is an incredibly hard movie to find online. Somebody actually sent me a copy of this film in the post, and I vowed never to watch it again. Next up, we have Mother. When this movie released, audiences absolutely hated it, and even now, this movie really divides people. Some people really love it, some people really hate it. I personally absolutely loved this film. The movie centers around a woman who is living peacefully with her husband when all of a sudden strangers start invading their home, turning that peace into total chaos. So this movie is structured like a panic attack. The movie creates this suffocating claustrophobia, and we see everything from Jennifer Lawrence's perspective. And because of that, when this movie really kicks off, we never really regain any emotional stability. But beneath the surface, this movie is operating as an allegory. The movie explores themes like exploitation, celebrity worship, environmental destruction, and religion. And most importantly, the commodification of suffering. Now, the reason this movie is on the list is because it completely removes or doesn't offer up any type of boundaries. There's no privacy and there's no safety or autonomy. And there is one scene in this movie which is so barbarically upsetting that even I struggle to get through it. And by the end of this movie, it stops feeling like a movie and it feels more like an apocalyptic fever dream. Next up, we have Happiness. Do not be fooled by this movie's title, and if you've seen the trailer to this film and decided to skip past it because it feels like some kind of boring rom-com, you would be heavily mistaken. The movie centers around a group of people whose lives don't seem connected but are connected in some kind of way, and we are following these people as they try and find love, as they're trying to find intimacy, as they're trying to find happiness. But every single relationship in this film is emotionally toxic. There are moments in this film that are unbelievably bizarre, and there are other moments in this film that are just flat out disturbing. The movie absolutely nails uncomfortable cinema, and what makes this movie so disturbing is just how casual everything in this film feels. There is no dramatic horror score, there's no stylized violence. All we have here is some deeply damaged people exposing themselves in a really horrifyingly normal way. The film contains themes that other filmmakers would rarely dare to touch, but what makes this film different and what makes this film so uncomfortable is, its emotional neutrality. The film isn't judging these people. The film is just presenting this story. The audience, us as viewers, are denied any type of catharsis. There's no comfort in this movie. And it's that what makes this movie so disturbing. Next up we have Be My Cat, a film for Anne. So I think that this is one of the most psychologically convincing found footage horror movies ever made. It centers around this aspiring filmmaker who becomes obsessed with the actress Anne Hathaway. He documents himself falling deeper and deeper into this delusion that if he makes the perfect film, Anne Hathaway will fall in love with him. The film that he is making has been written for Anne Hathaway to star in. So he hires all of these actresses who he thinks look like Anne Hathaway. He's going to send her this prototype of the film and see if she wants to be in it. The concept sounds absurd until you watch it, and then you realize this movie is anything but absurd. It is in fact actually quite a serious film. Now, what makes this movie so disturbing is just how realistic everything feels. And there are moments in this film where the line between actor and character completely disappear. Adrian Tolfi, who stars in this film, wrote this film, directed this film, plays this character like an actual isolated sociopath narcissist. And the movie is so terrifying because it understands that true danger does not look cinematic. Real predators are awkward, they're needy, they are fragile, and that's exactly the way this character is portrayed. And so this film doesn't feel like a film, it feels like a real disturbing artifact. Next up we have Sleeping Beauty. Now, I never see anybody talk about this film, which is crazy to me because it's fantastic, but it is disturbing in a completely different kind of way. It follows a university student who is taking increasingly strange jobs to survive financially, and eventually she finds herself in this underground world of wealthy men who pay to sleep next to women, unconscious women. So this movie is cold, it is clinical, and it is emotionally detached. And there are scenes in this movie which are so unbearably uncomfortable. The movie portrays our protagonist almost like an object and not a person, and that is kind of the point to this movie. The movie examines transactional intimacy and bodily commodification in a way that feels emotionally numb. The main character becomes increasingly disconnected from her own humanity, and the audience is forced into that same numbness. The movie can be read as a critique of capitalism's relationship with the body, especially female vulnerability and emotional alienation. And it's that emotional emptiness that is so upsetting. Next up we have The Angel's Melancholia, and we are starting to get into some real depraved stuff here. This is probably one of the most extreme films on this list, and for very good reason. The movie feels less like a film and more a descent into moral and spiritual annihilation. So the film centers around a group of people gathering in this isolated house. And it doesn't take long for the events of this film to spiral into extreme violence, degradation, and philosophical despair. The movie is infamous for its realism and unrelenting atmosphere. And what makes this movie truly disturbing is just how nihilistic it is. Most horror movies offer structure, good versus evil, spiritual meaning, some kind of catharsis, but this movie doesn't. What we have here is just pure nihilistic brutalism. This is an incredibly graphic film. There are things shown to us in this movie that are so gut-wrenchingly disgusting that you might have to pause and take a break. I know I certainly did. The film has no moral center or emotional relief. We have nothing here, just despair. It's a film that has been called exhausting rather than entertaining, and I totally get why. It feels like it is deliberately attacking us psychologically, not trying to scare you, but trying to break you down. This is a rough watch. Next up we have Real. So this is one of the most obscure and unpleasant slasher found footage horror movies ever made, but one that you absolutely need to check out because it is fantastic. The movie centers around a deranged stalker who becomes obsessed with another online personality, and this leads to some real nasty violence and voyeuristic behavior. The film feels nasty and mean-spirited. There is this sadistic fixation on humiliation and suffering that makes this film feel personal instead of cinematic. But it is an incredibly relevant film. It explores how, obsession transforms media consumption into ownership. The idea that fans can become entitled to the people that they admire. Stylistically, this movie embraces ugliness. The violence feels messy and it doesn't feel choreographed in any type of way. And this gives us a real sense of found footage, like we are watching something, a document rather than a film. Next up we have Flowers, and this is possibly the strangest movie on this list. The film follows these unalived women who are trapped under the home of their unaliver, and we follow them as they drift through this like surreal type of limbo. Instead of this film relying on narrative logic, the movie feels like visual poetry, and that is quite a sentence I just said there, considering how graphic and upsetting some of the visuals are in this film. But this is an incredibly atmospheric film packed full of symbolism. Everything feels dreamlike, decayed and mournful. The women are presented less like characters and more like fragments of memories, and this creates an overwhelming sense of grief and existential perjury. The film uses abstraction the same way some art house horror movies use dialogue. It communicates emotionally rather than logically, but it just happens to have some really nasty, gnarly visuals. And finally, we have The House with 100 Eyes. Now, this movie feels like a combination of found footage and exploitation cinema. The film centers around this couple who are creating some really bad films within their suburban house through the use of a whole bunch of hidden cameras. The whole movie is commentary on voyeurism, right? The title itself, A House with 100 Eyes, conveys that this is a film about surveillance. Every room in this house feels performative, and every act, as gnarly as it is, can become content. And the film weaponizes the audience's role as the spectator. And simply by watching this film, we become complicit in the exploitation it depicts. And that's what makes it so disturbing. It doesn't allow separation between the viewer and the violence. Like movies like Man Bites Dog or Funny Games, this movie is questioning the ethics of watching suffering as entertainment. And the movie is telling us that the monstrous isn't hidden away in some distant land. It could just be next door to us. The most disturbing movies are rarely the movies that are designed just to shock us. They are the films that destabilize you psychologically, the ones that blur reality and fiction, the ones that expose uncomfortable truths about loneliness and obsession and exploitation, about love and just the most basic human emotions. And because these films exist outside of the mainstream, they feel more dangerous. So if you've seen any of these movies, or you've seen a movie I haven't mentioned that is more disturbing than any of the films on this list, let me know in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into disturbing cinema, obscure films, or underrated horror gems that nobody talks about, be sure to hit subscribe.